Gemma Green, perfect name for our conscious podcast, if you don't mind me saying so.
It is indeed. I have been known as Gemma Green Recycling Queen at work for
Love
quite a
it.
while now.
So tell us about what you do.
So I work for FCC Environment, who are one of the leading recycling management companies within the UK, and I work as a reuse development manager for the company.
Now, that frankly sounds much more boring than it actually is. What does that actually involve? Because the work you're doing is really exciting.
So it's definitely not boring at all, Philippa. Every day for me is different, and I absolutely love what I do. So it's my job to divert waste or things that could end up as waste to be reused. So as soon as something ends up in the bin at one of our sites, unfortunately, it has to stay there. So it's my job to try and divert as many of those items as possible to make sure that they go down the reused route rather than being disposed of.
And in practice, that looks like programs that we are all loving on the telly, doesn't it, really?
You couldn't be more right. So you may know the programme Money for Nothing. They've actually been filming at two of our recycling centres for the last few months. So some of our sites are actually being featured on the TV as well. And things like the repair shop as well. We haven't been focused on there, but we do lots of work around that area as well.
And the fact of the matter is, as you said, there's this funny situation where we can't just turn up like they do on the telly. We just can't turn up at the tip and say, I need exactly a bookshelf like that, but in a different color. So can I have that one and paint it, please? We can't do that. And you're enabling that to actually happen in real life, aren't you?
We are indeed. So, unfortunately, it's not safe for us to let people take from the recycling centres because if it were, then we would be all for it. But practically, it's not something that we can do. So, we train our guys and girls that are on the ground to recognise reusable items. And we have separate containers on all of our recycling centres for these items to be stored. And so, we're able to separate as many of the items for reuse as possible. We then work with various charity partners around the UK to get these items sold within the charity shops. So at some of our recycling centres, we're lucky enough to have a reuse shop on site. And these are fantastic. They're like treasure troves. And so people can donate directly to the reuse shop, or they can donate at any of their nearest recycling centres as well.
How do you find out where those ones are? Because
Um,
I
so
love a treasure trove like that.
if you just go onto your local council's website, they will be able to tell you where your nearest reuse shop is.
Okay, and just literally in the search bar, you're looking for reuse shop.
Exactly, reuse shop, and that should give you all of the information that you're looking for.
And is this something that I mean, this has always been a little passion of mine, is old things and bringing them back to life. I've done it ever since I was little, really, actually. And when we lived in America for a time, I decided, well, we're buying the minimum amount of new furniture and thrifted all of it, and then repainted and repurposed and did all of that stuff. I love all of that, and it's a real outlet for creativity, I find. How about you? Was this something new for you, or was this something you would say was always in there?
This is something that we're definitely building on, and we see repair as a sort of key element to what we do. So, within some of our shops, we have our staff trained and qualified to pat test the electrical items. Obviously, we have to make sure that everything is safe and usable before it's resold. We also work with charity partners who are specialised in upholstery and furniture repair, that sort of thing. So in some of our shops, some of the items are sort of refurbished before they're resold on. And we've recently, well, last year, we opened our Swanton Road reuse drop-off centre, which was the first repair offering of its kind that we've created, where we fix white goods such as washing machines and fridges, and they then get repaired and sold on within the local community. And they also go to underprivileged groups, sort of families that have fled domestic violence, refugees, etc. So the goods that are repaired are really going to where they're needed as well, which is lovely.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. And is this something that when you say we have people come in and maybe reupholster, or is this something that general public can get involved in, or are they just groups that are pretty kind of close professional groups?
Oh, definitely something that the public can come and get involved in. So last year we did the our two first repair cafes, and so these were free events that were open to the public, to encourage them to bring their items along rather than just buy new and take something that's broken to the recycling centre, bring it along to the event. And you can sit down with the volunteer repairers, and learn the skills to fix your items yourself. So there is somebody qualified that's working on the item, but it's all about passing on the skills, so that that person could then fix themselves in future. So we've done these events in public places. One was in a church hall. So we try and make them really accessible for people, sort of bring it to their town, advertise them in advance so that they know what's going on and when it's happening. And we also do it for free as well to make sure that repair is accessible for people. And to try and sort of make it as encouraging as possible, really, because we would much rather an item be fixed than it end up at the recycling centre.
For sure. And what was the success rate? I mean, how were those cafes?
It was
Were they slightly experimental?
So they were experimental. It was the first time that we'd done it within FCC, but repair cafes across the UK are becoming bigger and better. So sometimes they're known as repair cafes, other times they're known as restart parties. So both networks have been up and running for a good number of years now. And so we worked with both organisations. To make sure that we were really getting the best from the event. So what we learned was that when you hold a repair cafe, it's usually good to do two dates at the same time and to have a follow-up date already planned. And the reason for that is a lot of the time the repairers can't fix the item there and then because the person will need to go off and buy a part for it. And you won't know that until you've started taking it apart. And so if there is a follow-up date in advance, then people know, yes, I can go off, get that part, and then come back on this day and the item will be repaired. Um, and so we did do two dates and we set those at the same time. And across the two dates, we fixed 30 items, and that prevented 51 kilograms of waste and 542 CO2 emissions. So for two events, incredibly successful. And it was just a lovely feel-good event as well. It really does bring the community together. There was all different ages, from young to elderly, and everyone just came together to sort of to repair. And yeah, it was really positive and a real feel good day as well.
And I would imagine that lots of older people had lots of wisdom to share with younger people, especially children.
It's funny you say that. The age of repairers does tend to be older, and so there are organisations that are doing a lot of work to try and encourage repair within young people. And I know that both projects have been going out to schools and running sessions with schools to try and sort of get people like young engineers interested in repair, and going down those sorts of routes from a young age. But as well as the older repairers, some of them are retired, and so they've got a lot of time on their hands now, and they enjoy it because it keeps them active and occupied. But they also feel like they're giving something back to the community as well. So yeah, really mixed bag of age group for repairers, but it does tend to be the older generation, and we would like to see some more younger repairers at our events.
And it's probably not for lack of interest from young people.
No, you're right. And there have been some workshops that have been run specifically aimed at young people. For example, mobile phone repair is something that is incredibly common and that they're very interested in. So I guess it's about trying to find areas of interest to sort of get them in and get them learning and picking up repair skills.
For me, it's furniture. What is it for you?
Um, so I think for me it's textiles because I have had a sewing machine from a young age, and I think my reuse obsession started when I was a nipper, and my dad used to take me to the charity shop when I was younger. So a lot of my clothes when I was younger came from charity shops. We were always raised to donate our goods once we'd outgrown them. And I guess it's something that I've just grown up with, really. So I think for me, the passion started with textiles and has then grown from there, really.
And what stood out for you at those repair cafes, or are there any particular stories of transformation for you?
I think the teddy bear that I personally fixed, that was a really good one because I was meant to be hosting the event, but our textile repairer unfortunately couldn't make it at the last minute. And so rather than hosting, I then ran a repair station, which I wasn't expecting to be doing. And I'd never tried to sew anything other than clothing before. So I was a little bit nervous because it had been passed down from generation to generation. And I was just concerned that I might do more harm than good. But I ended up sewing the leg back on, and I was really proud of how it looked and my work. But to see the lady's face, it was just priceless. And yeah, it had been broken for a long time. She hadn't known where she could take it. And even she herself said, I'm not sure that you're going to be able to repair it. So that for me was one of the nicest stories. We get lots of children's toys in as well. So seeing the children's faces when their items working again, um, yeah, it's a really lovely feel good event. It really is.
And it's really interesting to me that what's starting to filter through, I think, in our general consciousness is that we don't get that same set of feelings from going into a shop and buying something.
Exactly. And so I think this is where mindset needs to change, and we need to do more to sort of promote reuse as a positive thing, and that there are good quality items out there to be found, and also that they're available at a fraction of the price of buying new too. And a lot of the time, in addition to saving money, you're also helping to save the environment as well, because you're helping to save all of the CO2 emissions that are associated with manufacturing of new products. So it's not just about saving money, it's also helping the environment, but it's helping our charity partners as well. And so by buying pre-loved, you're also supporting local charities too. So it really is a win-win for everybody.
It's right around, isn't it? It's a whole wraparound from source to sink, with benefits in every direction, really. Tell us about some of the challenges that you guys face keeping stuff out of, as you said, the bins. Keeping stuff out of landfill.
And so this is one of the trickiest parts, is raising awareness that you can drop items off at the recycling centre for reuse, because I think a lot of people just don't know that that option's there. So we've done an awful lot of work around communications, trying to spread the reuse message and really shout about it from the rooftops. We also train all of our staff that work at the recycling centres. We've got what we call toolbox talks. So we talk them through the different items that can and can't be accepted and explain the reasons why. And we have training documents in place too, so that when they join us, they can see exactly what the charities want, what can and can't be accepted. There are some items that we can't take for safety reasons, like furniture, for example, has to have the right fire safety labels. Glass has to have the correct safety marks on them, etc. And so we train the guys that are on the ground to notice the reuse when it comes onto site, and to try and divert it from the bins before it gets there.
Do you know even what's the most popular thing that you can divert that ends up in the bin and it's like a constant flow of no, that we can divert, that we can divert? Is there something that is more common?
There definitely are. And we've been doing some work to look into the top 10 items recently that are mostly sold within our reuse shops. Um, and so electricals is one of the top one. Laptops, you'd be amazed how many people straight in the electrical bin rather than thinking it can be donated to reuse. So laptops and TVs, I'd say definitely are some of the most popular items that we accept. And bikes as well. We sell an awful large number of bikes through our reuse shops. Homeware, bric-a-brac, children's toys and games, you name it, we can pretty much sell it through our reuse shops, but they're some of the most popular items that I've just listed.
And given that it's a win-win situation, why aren't we seeing more of these reuse shops?
So you will definitely be seeing more, not just us as a business. I'm aware that some of the other large waste management companies out there, they are also understanding the value of reuse. And as a business ourselves, we're constantly planning new shops, and we're hoping to open a number more shops in the next coming years as well. So we've recognised the success of them. We know how fantastic it is for the environment. And now it's about sort of rolling it out all across the UK, wherever possible. And for us, on some of our contracts, there just isn't room to run a reuse shop from the sites because they just don't have the space to do so. And so on one contract at the moment, we're looking into a high street property. So the items could feed into an external shop. We've noticed it doesn't necessarily have to be at the recycling centre, because we can collect the items there and transport them to a reuse shop. So this is something that we're building on at the moment. But we've also done, I think it's 17 now, pop-up reuse shops. And so the whole idea of a pop-up is if you can't get to the shop, then we bring the shop to you. And so this has worked really well in areas where we don't have a shop yet, or there's one in the pipeline. And so we've literally been popping up here, there, and everywhere. We've had some really successful events now. We've done them at steam rallies. We've partnered with the National Trust at Stowe Gardens. We've done them at summer fetes, markets, you name it. We've probably done a pop-up there. And they've been so successful, not just to sell the reuse items, that has worked really well, but also to raise awareness of what we're doing at the recycling centres, and to tell people all of these fantastic items that you can see were all donated at the recycling centre. And so, yeah, like I said, they've been incredibly successful so far, and we've got many more planned throughout the year as well.
And what is the alternative? So, I mean, we hear all the time, no, don't, it'll end up in landfill, it'll end up in landfill. I mean, I know, but what is, for people who don't know, so bad about landfill?
So, landfill is the very last thing that we would want to do, because it is so damaging to the environment. It takes years and years and years for the items to biodegrade, and it is just not what we want to be doing. And as a company, it's something that we don't do. So we do have to send some hazardous waste to landfill, but we will always send items to energy from waste. which is much, much better for the environment and generates power for local homes as well.
So how does tell us about that? How does that work?
Of course. So whenever we're talking about waste, we always look to the waste hierarchy. So reduce is at the very top of the hierarchy. Obviously, we want to reduce our waste and not produce it in the first place. And then reuse is next. And we've talked about reuse a lot already, and that's my sort of sole focus. And then recycling. So we will always try and recycle any items that come to our recycling centres. If they can be recycled, then we'll send it down that route. But there are some items that can't be recycled, and they would have to go to energy from waste. And so they get they go into an incinerator and they're burnt, and that then generates electricity, which then powers the neighbouring homes. So it's not an ideal solution, but it's much, much better for the environment than if we were to send things to landfill.
And you're right, reduce at the top of the hierarchy. If we haven't got the waste to be dealing with, that's the very best thing that we can do, right?
Exactly that, and reuse comes into that as well. So reducing our waste, buying pre-loved rather than buying new, as you mentioned before. We can all do our part to sort of help reduce waste and what we send to energy from waste or landfill, for that matter.
When you see people at these, not just repair cafes where, oh, this is broken, can we repair it? But tell me about some of the things that you see that you think, I would never have thought to do that with that. Do you see that kind of level of creativity sometimes?
We do, definitely. And some really cool things I've seen are items that can't be repaired, but have then been repurposed to make something else. So, for example, musical instruments that have had its past and can't be repaired so that it can play again. I've seen trumpets that have been upcycled into bedside lights, for example. So I think repurposing and upcycling is also becoming more and more fashionable. So if something can't be repaired, it doesn't mean that there isn't another use for it before it can be recycled.
Those are the things that get me really excited. I'm not quite sure why, but it's just always really exciting to see, I think, that level of creativity with repurposing.
Oh, I agree completely. And something that we'd like to do more of moving forwards is helping teach people the skills to upcycle and to repair or upholster, so that they've got the confidence to do it themselves. And so this is something that we're hoping to do more of, sort of over the coming months, is guide people so that they've got the confidence to have a go themselves.
I mean, from my perspective, YouTube helps me an awful lot. If I don't know how to do something or how to fix something, it's so good to have someone on YouTube explaining how to do it. And usually I can find what I need now, whether it's upholstery or fixing the roof or plumbing. Even I've done, learned how to do some plumbing on YouTube. So there's usually somewhere online, some resource that you can find.
I couldn't agree more. And I actually worked on a project quite similar during COVID. We had planned a workshop to teach people textile repair skills. So it was quite simple repair skills like sewing on a button or repairing a hole in a jumper or darning a sock, for example. And we had planned to hold this event in person, but due to COVID, we couldn't do so. But what we were able to do was set up an online tutorial. And so we sent out all of the items that people would need, because we were aware that if they've never sewn before, then they might not have a needle and thread or a spare button, etc. And so we created a little mini repair kit, and this was then sent out to the residents' home, and they could then join the online webinar and follow our guidance, and repair things as they were watching the tutorial. But then it was also recorded so that they could continue to watch it back if they struggled with any part of it. So I agree. I think YouTube and tutorials are definitely the way forwards. And I agree, I've also found them very helpful with repair in the past.
And what's the uptake on it? You know, how many people are turning up at the repair cafes or on the online tutorials?
So the repair cafes have been incredibly popular. Altogether, we had 52 people come across the two events. Um, and even more for the online workshop that was run. So there definitely is a want for it out there, I'd say, and a requirement for it. And the repair cafes are just popping up left, right, and centre. I know where I live at the moment, and it's just fantastic because there's now one in nearly every neighbouring town. So people aren't having to travel so far to access repair either. And so I think it's definitely moving in the right direction, but there's always more that we can do.
And it's not just a sense of duty, is it? There's a proper excitement about it. And we talk a lot on this podcast about the difference between doom and gloom and we should and we must, and being excited and inspired. And I feel like there's a lot of excitement and inspiration around this area of repurpose and reuse.
See, I'm biased because I'm always going to, I genuinely get excited by it, but I can't help it. So yeah, so I think 100%. But there is a lot of excitement around it. It's like when I'm in one of our reuse shops and I see somebody find a bargain and they're getting it for such a great price, seeing their excitement rubs off on me. So I think it's exciting going to the shops and finding new treasures. It's exciting hosting the repair element, the repair cafes, etc. Because seeing people so chuffed when a sentimental item is fixed and then reusable, it's just lovely. And so yeah, I think it's really exciting, both reuse and repair. And there's so much more scope for more to be done, which also excites me because I think it's still very early days. And just what we've done at Swanton Road, for example, if we can replicate that elsewhere across the UK, then it just goes to show that nothing, like anything's possible, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the repair shop on TV gave us all permission to go, yeah, I love this stuff. Don't you? You know, and then everyone suddenly realized, oh, everyone else also loves this stuff.
I think TV shows like The Repair Shop have helped massively because they've brought repair into people's homes and they've made it sort of more accessible and I guess inspired people to go and look and search for their local repairers and see what skilled people they have in their area. So yeah, definitely fair play to Jay Blades and the team. They've done a cracking job, and may they continue to do so because it really does help sort of my job and what we do as a business to try and divert the waste. It's great that we've got people out there sort of on such recognised channels shouting about it.
And what does our future look like in terms of waste? I mean, you've got an inside view into the waste industry. Looking ahead 10, 20, 30 years, we can't surely continue as we are. How do we, I mean, and you're making great strides yourself to change things, obviously. Can we go even further though? And do we need to?
100% we need to. And yes, we definitely can go further. I think recycling is key, but above that, reuse is far more important. And that if we can divert items from the waste stream, that so that we're preventing them from even needing to be recycled or ending up at the energy from waste facility, I think that is definitely key. And raising awareness of reuse and making it the norm and making people really think twice before they purchase an item or before they recycle an item even. I think that really is key to change. And I think that reuse plays a very big part in it.
Yeah. And what do you hear from the children that you meet through your job with the schools and with the repair cafes? What are you seeing and hearing from them? Because they're the guys that are going to be dealing with our waste at the end of the day.
What I will say is that I am pleasantly surprised when I go on school visits. I do a lot of talks, tours, like site tours, that sort of thing. Children are incredibly passionate about the environment nowadays, and it is really lovely to see. And I think it's because they're being given a good understanding of what it is that we've done and how we need to change that. And so a lot of the time I find that children are a lot more passionate than adults, because they understand that we do need to make change. And so, yeah, I think that there are, like I say, children are definitely some of the most passionate audience that I work with, and they're keen. They want to make a difference. So yeah, they are key, really.
They are also so creative, and they don't have those same boundaries of, well, this is a bookshelf, you can't use it as a table for your farm. Like whatever. They don't have those same kind of boundaries when it comes to looking at things.
No, you're right. And we have on one of our contracts, they have run an upcycling workshop just for children. And they were able to either bring along their own item to upcycle or choose one from the reuse shops. And then they were taught the skills, how to upcycle it themselves, how to sand it down correctly, the best paints and what would work on what type of wood, and various skills to upcycle the item. And it was really popular. And so I think that children definitely, they do want to get involved, and they do want to make a difference.
Gemma, there's so many projects that you're talking about that I think are so exciting, and I'm sure I'm not the only one listening thinking I'd like to do some of that. How can we find out about all of these things that are going on and perhaps get involved?
So I work for FCC Environment, and whenever we do anything reuse or repair related, we'll pop that on our website. But a lot of the time, because we are working in partnership with the councils, a lot of the time the easiest place to find the information is your local council's website, because we will work with them to make sure that it gets out to the wider audience. So I'd say your local council's website would usually be the first port of call, but I'd also recommend following their social feeds. So most councils will have a Recycle For, or the name of the council, then Recycling Facebook page. And these are great places to pick up hints and tips about reuse, recycling, and repair. But also, if we're hosting any events like a pop-up repair cafe or a pop-up reuse shop, then it will be advertised on the council's Facebook page or socials feed. So I'd say follow the local council's webpage, but also social media is a fantastic tool for sort of knowing and finding out about what's going on in your area.
Fantastic. That is really useful to know. And there's so much room for volunteering and for enthusiastic people to pass on their knowledge about repairing.
Oh, there definitely is. So we have 10 reuse shops across the UK, and we work with various charity partners who manage the shops for us. And the charity partners are always looking for volunteers to come and get involved, whether it be helping out in the shops, arranging stock, collecting or segregating items for reuse. It might be pat testing items. There's so many ways that you can volunteer and come and get involved. If you're a repairer and you've got repair skills, could you go along to your next pop-up repair cafe, and could you support it that way? So I think volunteering does play a big part in what we do, and I know that our charity partners are incredibly grateful for the support that they get from their volunteers.
And name those charity partners for us.
So we've got a number of charity partners. So we work with South Bucks Hospice down in Buckinghamshire. We work with Waste Savers in Wales, Enfys, Dove House Hospice. I'm trying to think, there's so many of them. We're about to start working with Keach Hospice. Um, I'm trying to think. There's so many. So we tend to work with local charities as much as possible because we want to help support local people. And so it tends to be like smaller charities such as hospices. Refurnish, we also do a lot of work with. Um, the Yorkshire Bike Shack. Whilst talking about bikes, we do a lot of work with the prison service. And so we feed bikes into various prisons within the UK. And the prisoners are taught by a trained Cyclex professional how to fix up and repair the bikes. And then they go back to our charity shops to be sold. And to give you an idea, a bike that hasn't had any repair and that has just come in and been donated at one of our recycling centres, the average sale price across the board would be just under £10. Whereas a bike that has gone through the prison service and has got a certificate to say that it's fully maintained and roadworthy, they can sell for around £65. So it makes a huge difference. But not only is that profit helping our charity partners, it's also teaching the prisoners the repair skills so that when they're released, they can get into full-time employment. And so that's a lovely sort of little bit of circular economy and a nice sort of story as well.
And the bottom line is that bike doesn't end up in the waste.
Exactly.
Somebody else gets the pleasure of it.
Yeah, so it's a win-win, Philippa, it really is.
Well, and also a win-win environmentally in terms of somebody's using a bike instead of a car.
There is that too, definitely.
We could
And
be
I
at this
must
for hours.
apologise because I'm sure that I've forgotten some of our charity partners there. I definitely have. So
That's
I
all
am
right.
sorry. I should have come ready and prepared. So apologies to any of our charities that I have missed off there. But you're all fantastic and you all do a brilliant job.
And I think by naming so many as you did, I mean, you can't do an exhaustive list off the top of your head, but by naming so many, I think what you've done is say to us, wherever you are, basically, there's going to be someone local that could do with some help.
100%. And it's really rewarding for our charity partners as well, because we're able to feed the items into their shops, and then the profit helps them to make a difference, whether it be refurnishing somebody's home or helping them flee domestic violence, or for one of the hospices, if they're helping support somebody with palliative care. Our charities really do some fantastic work out there, and to think that it all starts at the recycling centre, and by donating your items, yeah, I think it's pretty special what they do.
And in an era where so many of us feel so helpless against these huge challenges facing our planet and our own race, this is all really lovely to hear, right?
I think so. So yeah, definitely, and it is very accessible, and I just want it to become even more so. And I want reuse to be accepted at every single recycling centre out there, not just ours. And I want to see more of these reuse shops popping up. And if there isn't space for a permanent shop, then we've proven with our pop-up events how successful they can be, and that we can bring reuse to the people. And I think it's all about sort of spreading that message and trying to make it sort of more appealing for people, and show them what great items there are out there to be had.
Fantastic. Gemma Green, what a pleasure to talk to you today. Again, we could have gone on for hours. And I will certainly be Googling repair shops near me, repair cafes near me, and reusing as ever. You'll be pleased to know I've reused my coffee cans currently. They are growing seedlings on my kitchen windowsill.
That is what I like to hear. Well, thank you for having me, Philippa. I've really enjoyed it.
Pleasure.